Welcome everybody again. It's great to have you with us. So it's nice to see some familiar faces and great to meet some new people as well. So hope you enjoy this afternoon's webinar, or this morning or this evening, depending on what part of the world you're in. Maybe just to kick off and say a couple of things around what we're doing here and why we're here. So I guess if we were to think back over the last 5 years, we've probably seen more change in our organizations across all sectors, public, private, non-profit, than we've seen in the past 25 years. And by all accounts, the next 5 will see even more of the same. So I don't think it's hyperbole to say that as change practitioners, you're at the center of perhaps the most significant period of change in human history, whether it's dealing with the climate crisis or just dealing with the challenges arising out of the pandemic, or it's addressing many of the challenges and problems that we're facing. So you're very welcome to today's webinar, where we're going to be exploring the journey of the profession to date and the future of the change management profession. So before we get started, I think it's always good to have a quote to kind of prompt us a little bit. So even prior to the pandemic, organizations were experiencing huge change, whether it was disruption to their business models, digitization, change in expectations of governments, the relationship of corporations to their stakeholders. But the pandemic has accelerated many of the changes and the trends that were already underway. But it's also created huge opportunities as well to address some long-standing challenges. And one of those challenges, from my perspective and from Isolde's view, is for change management professionals to take a step back and to reflect on where we're going, the role of the profession, how we can bring value to our organizations, and to challenge maybe some of the presumptions that we have around what's possible and how we move forward. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is always that we're fighting the last battle, not the next one. So in terms of our agenda today, it's going to be an interactive reflection on the journey of the profession to date and where we aspire to go to into the future. So we'll be drawing both on research by ProSci and the collective intelligence of this group. We'll be combining inputs and discussion and breakouts and reflection to identify some of the key themes, issues, opportunities, and challenges that are facing us. So we really hope you enjoy this interactive webinar. So just a little bit about myself, and then I'll hand over to Isolde to introduce herself. So my name's Angelo McNeive. I'm a business psychologist based in Dublin. Stepstone Consulting is a company that I co-founded. We're a ProSci global affiliate, and I spend a lot of my time advising organizations and training and building capability and capacity within organizations to manage change well. I'm mad about nature, I'm mad about animals and history, and I'm really passionate about learning. I don't think you can ever know enough. So I'm really looking forward to sharing some of our thoughts, but also learning from you as well. So with that, I'll hand over to Isolde.
Angelo, do you want to put up the slides a moment? That'd be great.
Yeah, no props. Bear with me 1 sec.
Okay, hello everyone. Also welcome from my side. I can see a couple of faces from the CCB Network. It's really great to have you guys with us again. Maybe also nice to say this is not a complete repeat of the one that you've maybe seen before. We've actually tweaked it and we've made it even better. So I hope you really join in the interactive parts. Introducing myself, I'm Isolde. I'm based in just outside of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. I'm working for the People Side of Change. It's a primary affiliated organization with ProSci. And we're basically working with trainings primarily, but also for me, I'm working mostly in the consultant area. Beside the consultancy, I'm also community manager for CCB Network. It's a network of 9 partner organizations throughout Europe, and we're really busy with creating and growing best practices. And what that means is not only like today, where we're presenting some ideas, but we really want to hear from you guys, and we want to start to create a community of best practices sharing. So it's not about us presenting what we think will be the future of change, but it's really about getting you guys in touch with briefly some ideas, some inputs that maybe prompt further thought and some great discussions. So I'm looking forward to it. We're hosted today by the Change Management Network. So it's a big thank you to them for giving us the space to make contact with you guys. You see in the middle, there's the CCB Network, and we're also coming from a ProSky point of view. It's not to say it's the only point of view presenter today. We're interested in bringing all of the different points of view together. But this is just for transparency. We're coming from ProSky organizations. Okay, next slide, please. So before we go into the future or even the present, it can be really interesting just to see where we're coming from. It's not to get too lost in these past ideas, but it's really good to bring these together with our present situation and start to really look at how are we being influenced from the past, and how can we maybe let some of these things go, but also grow into possible next practical steps and dare I say it, future. I'm a little bit scared of the idea of future because we always get into theory. And for me, one of the big aims of today is to keep really close by to creating practical steps together. Next slide, please. So what I'd like to do is just for a moment introduce some brief ideas. So within the future of change, when we're looking back, you can see on the slide in front of you, just presenting a little bit the idea that as change managers, we're working alongside different professions. So we're working alongside project managers, quality management, maybe even helping implement these from the people side. We also have, you can see at the bottom in yellow, as change managers, we're influenced, all of us, by lots of different thoughts, theories, methods, models, you name it. So to start with, I'd like to just bring your attention to the idea that project management has been around for more than 20 years now. It started to get lots of different shapes and forms, be it waterfall, agile, or even I had a couple of days ago, Wagile, which is a nice combination of the two. But the idea of this being an older profession means many things, but the focus for me now is to bring your attention to the fact that there's already an established culture and language around project management. There's also a different understanding of what change means in different professions or in different methodologies. And it's not always positive. Change management is also relatively young. So you can see that change management started to get formed in the 1990s, and project management has already had a number of years to really start to find its own feet. And while in change management, we've got a lot of influencing models and concepts, and we have some great organizations out there really putting together these, let's say, possibilities. We still have many different methodologies out there. We're not united in one thought or one set of processes. And this gives both the possibility for a lot of richness. We have a lot of quality and a lot of beautiful, great ideas out there. But at the same time, it's hard for maybe people on the outside to really get a grasp of what change management is. And if you ask change managers even, quite often they will say they have complete different stories about what change management is, but usually united by the fact that they're trying to deal with people-sided change. Next slide, please. So just coming back to the one language, so quite often some of our struggles of dealing or working with other people in other professions is that basically the word change can mean so many different things. So if you look in sort of Prince 2, for example, change is quite often referred to as a risk. It's something that we need to deal with in order to not go out of scope or out of time or out of budget with a project. Change can mean it's non-compliant. I've just done an ISO 9001 training for implementation and come across this, and I thought this is really interesting, because if we're making such big changes in companies, how can we think of change as non-compliant? I'm going to fast forward to the last one, and I think a lot of change managers will, or change busy people will like this one, work with this, and that is change is inevitable. So somehow if we have these big differences between changes equals not compliant or it is inevitable, then somehow there's a sort of chasm of thought that we need to cross over as change managers to reach these other professions and to bring them on board. Next slide, please. So I think none of this is new to you, but these are just sort of prompts. I think for me, in my own work, the idea of having one language is always something that's talked about quite a lot in projects. So the idea of getting everybody on board in one place and in one way of thinking. But whether we actually engage with the right factors in order to be able to do that is still a big question in my head. So this is just coming to the present slide. This is a very basic timeline from ProSky. I think it's a nice one. It just brings together also the first slide about project management. So you see here, basically up until the 1990s, we had a lot of different sort of prototype models or concepts that we brought together within the change profession. Change management, in its beauty and also sometimes in its difficulty to define, it brings together a lot of different abilities, whether it's being able to work with the human resources side of things, if it's to develop actual structure with the governance level, if it's to focus on educating people, or to focus on the psychology, what motivates people to get to where they're going to go. So that was basically, we've got some really great foundations that I think a lot of people are still using in one way or another. Then change management has come onto the radar, and then it got formalized. So there's different, more structured models out there now, ways of thinking. You can think of ProSky, but also the Kotter method as examples. And now we're entering into a really interesting time, because we've got these kind of past influences, but we also have some really interesting new developments. And I have to say, and sadly, it's created through the COVID situation. So, but in any big change or big development, there's always some pros as well as the cons. I think we're all aware of that we can see these in our everyday lives. Angelo, can you move the slide on, please? So I won't go through all of these, but basically this is just, again, just a prompt about your thoughts. Probably you have your own ideas on these things. I'm going to give you a moment in a second to get these out and discuss these in smaller groups. But first of all, these are just the pre-COVID trends, because obviously COVID has created a slightly different setup and different needs. It's also pinpointed a greater need for change management, and not necessarily understanding what change management can mean for the organization. Can we move on, please? So coming to the present, I know this is a little bit of a quick run through, but we really wanted to get to the interesting place, and that is the discussions from you guys. So the question is, where are we today? Next slide, please. So Angelo, do you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, okay, folks. So what we're going to do is we're going to put you into breakouts. I think we've roughly about 12 rooms now, I think, at this stage. So we're going to put you into small groups. And if you would, folks, I'd ask you to focus on the today side of this question. So we'll come back to the tomorrow side of the equation shortly. But in this short breakout, we're going to focus on where we are today. So the question that we're posing to you, and we'll share a little template with you shortly, is how would you describe the current state of the change management profession? So you might think about things like the roles that we perform, the kinds of critical behaviors that we need to exhibit, our mindset, attitudes, and beliefs. What are some of the success factors or the professional development journey that we typically go through? How we interact with other key actors in a change project and so on. Don't be limited to these ideas, but these are some starters anyway to get you thinking, okay? So you'll have about 15 minutes when we break in. I'm going to ask you, if you would, if one person in the group would kind of take ownership of the template, if they wouldn't mind kindly doing that for everybody, and to fill in the thoughts and notes and ideas that the group generates into the today part of the template. Is that okay with everybody? That work? Great to have everybody with us.
Yeah.
So look, we'd love to hear, right? I'd love to go around every group, and I wish we had loads and loads of time to explore stuff deeply, but we don't. So I want to keep the pace moving along, right? So could I hear from a few groups, if I kind of drop in on one or two groups as we go, and just ask you, I'm particularly interested in, if you like, common themes, common issues that arose that you identified in your groups, right? So was there one or two things you said, oh yeah, that's something we're facing that one as well, right? Or that's an aspect of the current state of the profession that we resonates with us, So I'm going to jump in on room one if I could. So that would have been Ali and Dave and Marianne. Yeah, that group. And Mai Jensen as well.
Yeah. We sort of discussed a number of things. And we sort of said that there's people can feel pushed into change management from project management perspective. They're aware of it, they know about it, but it's not really something they want, so they get pushed into it. Mm-hmm. There is, as a change manager, we're in a transitional state because we're going from being seen as doing digital, transformational, and everything to do with change, to more focusing on the people side of change and the impact to the people. There's a lot of uncertainty with the other professions, because although they have that awareness, they don't really understand what we do. So they have a lot of uncertainty, and therefore they will have higher or lower expectations of what we can do depending on the individuals. And that was really the sort of common themes. We discussed a lot around models and such like, but those are the common themes.
Can I just add something, Dave? Yeah. We were talking about the target group. That was also a common one, that you have to take into consideration the age of the people you are changing. Because today a lot of young people are used to daily changes. They are used to having digital tools to work with, while if you work with people that are in their 50s and their 60s, they don't have the same experience, maybe, depending, of course, on what kind of... I'm not putting everyone in the same box here, but the group that I'm working with, they don't have a high digital level at all, which means that they are kind of resistant to actually just using them at all. And then you have to spend more time on the why. than what you have to do with younger people. That was just something that we also talked a lot about. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one, right? So in the sense that if we're thinking about perhaps different cohorts require different emphasis or more time or focus on different aspects of ADKAR if you're using ADKAR as your change model, right? So that's a really interesting call out, right, Marianne? Thanks. Okay, cool. I'm going to skip a couple of groups. I'm going to go to group 4, right, which was Amanda's group. So were there any common themes that you guys identified?
Yes. What we realized is that we are from many different regions. So we had South Africa with Amanda, India and Germany, but I'm French. And we realized that the impact of the pandemic also has an impact on how we see change as change managers. And that most of the people we know are in survival mode. And so they don't really care about change. They don't see the importance of it. They don't understand what it is. So it has been the main question: how do we make change not so scary? And we had some ideas like talking about neurosciences, the biases, the brain, how it works, so that people know, okay, I'm stressed out, that's normal, that's my brain, that's everything is all right. And so that was it, basically. But I said, if they want to add something from the group, feel free.
Yeah. Any of the others want to share something from the group?
I'll share from group 9. So we kind of talked, we came from different parts of the world as well, but what we really talked about was the application of change management has become this one size fits all perspective. And we're not really taking into consideration the different cultures, and that we're just asking people to adopt whatever this change is, built in whatever specific country and culture or city, where every city can be very different. And so we need to be very mindful that the adoption of change needs to be tailor-made to that specific region or city or culture.
Yeah, I think that's a good call out, Chrissy. I think the danger is we take we're trying to achieve maybe in a global rollout standardization. That's one of the bases of return on investment on the solution we're trying to deliver. Yeah, but the danger then is that in as exactly as you say, we don't bring a cultural lens to one, how we develop that solution in the first place, but two, then how we bring people along in the journey to adopt and use it well. So I think, I think that's something that we're all having to get much more attuned to, much more aware of, much more tolerant of the need for far greater awareness of cultural diversity. And I think that's a good challenge. I think that's a good thing to be doing, right? So I know I'm pretty sure an awful lot of people in this group are up for that, but we have to bring sometimes our business owners and sponsors along with us in that conversation. So cool. Can I throw it open? One last comment, one last reflection from the current state, and then we'll move on, and I'll hand back to Isolde. France, yeah, go for it. You got your hand up. Yeah.
Thank you. I think one of the common themes that we talked about in our group is that is about standardization or a lack of standardization in terms of the way to implement, the styles of implementation, the terminology is very different. The concept of sponsorship is also very different from in project management and in change management. Also confusion around different models or methodology, and we talked about that, and also how the different disciplines of communications, for example, of training, and very much siloed, which makes it more challenging to do a good job in change management.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
also we talked about, yeah.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
no, go ahead. Go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to cut across you. Yeah.
the difficulty because of change management with intangible results is a difficult sell, because yes, because senior leaders don't always see specifically the outcome, or there's a level of discomfort in investing in uncertainty, uncertain outcomes and intangible products.
It's hard to put our finger on attitudes, beliefs, and value system, and so on, right? And mindset.
Exactly.
I think we have a layer of complexity there too, because within the project management discipline, there's a lot of different approaches. You know, there's a range of different methodologies, frameworks, bodies of knowledge. And so there isn't a coherent language on the technical side, and then we're struggling with a layer then on the people side as well. So that just all adds to the potential for miscommunication, misunderstanding, lack of clarity around roles and expectations. Yeah. Okay, cool. I'm going to share my screen again, and I'm going to hand back to Isolde. Thanks, guys. Thanks for taking part in that. Okay. Hope everybody can see my screen there. Give me a thumbs up if that's all good.
Yeah, can see your screen. It's looking good. Well, I think, to be honest, we've looked through a lot of this already. We've already had some quite in-depth conversations, so I'm not quite sure how much more to say on this slide. Only that I maybe wished that I could have taken part in the conversations. So, but basically, so yeah, we thought of these kind of current challenges as good possibilities. So the misunderstanding of CM, or for change management, that can be taken in multiple different ways. But I think maybe the first one that I've come across more often, so my personal experience, is very much that we don't really know how to define ourselves yet. So if we can't define ourselves yet, how can we expect other people to know what we can bring to them, whether it's a team, an organization, or any other sort of structure? So it's really important somehow that we can get a bit clearer about what it is that we do and how we bring that across to the rest of the world. Lack of resources. Well, people tend to think that we can make everything from nothing. Sometimes, maybe if some of you are lucky enough to have a management that really understands the value of change management, I think it's few and far between. So it's super great if you've got that. But actually, a lot of management expect that dealing with the people side is a kind of a free, easy thing to realize. But actually, it really takes the same attention as project management. And it's probably very much linked to the first point, that if they don't know what they're getting, then they're not really interested then to pay for something. Mid-level management, resistance, lack of support. Well, I think this is something that is growing actually. And I think maybe a nice addition to this would be the situation with sponsors. So quite often, if you look in the ProSky research, it's often said that sponsors are number one reason that projects fail. So their support is really, really necessary. But it's also the line managers, because they're dealing with almost two sides of the picture. They're dealing with their upper management, but they're also trying to make the best possible situation for the people within their teams. So maybe it's some kind of awareness of how can we reach this level in a more profound way. Relevance, I think this is again very broad. I won't really touch on this, but I'm sure you guys have some really great ideas. Feel free to put them in the chat. I forgot to say this in the beginning, but use the chat in whatever shape or form. We'll also give you a lot of moments to speak and ask questions, but also ask questions of each other. Change saturation, time management. Well, I think we can all really appreciate that in this current time, we've suddenly had a lot more change projects or need for change occurring. And in a way, with the other points, if you include everything together, it's quite difficult to really know, first of all, so what is really essential? So if we don't know what change management does or is, how can we possibly categorize saturation? But people simply feel, I think, I can't remember who made the comment now, but somebody made the comment that change is happening in our heads. Well, this is certainly the case. And if we can't really put things into place, if we can't get in touch with a vision maybe of what this change means to us in the long run, it's very hard to feel anything but saturated or fatigued, just to use some of the cliche words. But this is something that's really important. Maybe the possibility to grow some kind of intrinsic change mindset could be a really great way forward with this one. But I'm sure you've got ideas too. Next slide, please. So here we've got some current gaps. So we're not only promoting ProSky. I'm not really trying to promote ProSky, just to be clear, but there's also got the Change Management Institute. So this is their idea of some of the skills gaps and implications that we currently feel. Just wondering, I think this is all pretty much speaks for itself. Does anybody have?
Yeah, I was just going to ask a question if I could, if I could jump in for 1 second. I'm just wondering to what extent people are seeing these gaps, right? So, you know, maybe you might raise your hand if you say, look, we see these, or we feel these, or I recognize this in myself, or, you know, so maybe get 1 or 2 comments if you could. Dave, yeah, I got to see your hand up there.
The team that I work with started 6 months ago in an organisation, and we were all brand new. Literally, the head of change unfortunately left before we actually started. So,
nice.
Yeah. So he brought in a new team, and then he left, and we had to wait. But while we were waiting, we obviously went in to try to learn a lot about the organisation that we were starting with. And Agile is something that none of us, the 3 change managers, had actually worked with before. We'd all used sort of waterfall or been part of waterfall projects. So we actually had to sit down and not only go down to the Scrum Masters and say, right, can you do training sessions and such like for us to bring us up, but then working our way through the projects to support the projects and try to understand how they are moving in that Agile sort of methodology, and then how we could impact as change managers into that methodology. And it was a real gap for us.
Okay. Thanks, Dave. Nice call out.
Anybody else? Yeah, I was going to ask the same question, Angelo, just now, but anybody else have something they'd like to share? There's a few people writing in the chat, but feel free to speak out, guys. It's really nice to get talking if you're not too shy.
Francis said I'd add facilitation to that list. Yeah, I got that.
I can share something. This is Anami. I don't know how to raise my hand in this tool.
Hi, Anami.
Hi, well, welcome.
You guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfect.
So I'm actually a Belgian based in St. Louis in the US. And I shared this with a group before. I recently changed jobs, and I've been active in the change management space over the last, maybe the formal change management space, the last 8 years. And what I've seen in the US is definitely a lack of experienced change management, right? So there's a lot of great opportunities to learn what change management is, and I even taught ProSci, and so I think there's great momentum in trying to discover the discipline and understanding what it is, but I do see that there is a lack of real long or experience of actually doing it, and especially on large scale initiatives. The positive, though, is that I've seen with COVID is that companies are no longer really looking by location, but they're opening up if they're trying to hire. I see here that there is remote options, right? So they're expanding their search across the US and looking for that talent, not just by location, but really opening it up and get the best candidate.
Yeah, and we're certainly seeing that on the European side as well, in terms of virtual change management emerging, to get to that pool of expertise. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
which brings its own challenges, right?
Yeah.
Because if it's all about people and doing this in a virtual world, you really have to be intentional about developing the relationships and make sure you continue to connect with people, right?
Yeah, and maybe even coming back to the comments about culture before, is establishing a little bit more strongly the need for a focus on culture, particularly if you're not from that culture. I think you can.
Culture is very important.
Yeah, yeah. Great.
Lovely.
Hi,
Right, thank
Susan
you.
here from hi, how are you?
Hi, Susan.
From Ireland. That's a really, really good point that you just made, that it is about culture. And we were discussing it in the chat. For me, I go down the line of organizational change, but I don't go down the way of management specifically. I go down it through leadership and through really focusing the concerted effort through purpose, from purpose through vision and down into the processes. And I think it's sometimes, if I can be a little bit provocative, I think we over complicate what change management is. We all process change every single day of our lives. So there's huge transferable skills available to all of us here in the room, but every single person that is experiencing change, whether it be in life or in work. And I think sometimes, just sometimes, change managers kind of compartmentalize those skills instead of just having a pool of skills and dialing up one area more in certain situations, and and using those transferable skills from life. So I would definitely bring that into understanding and getting the understanding of what change management is. It's life skills.
No,
I think that was a really good provocation, Susan.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So one of the things I would see there is the potential for self-limiting beliefs. All right. So the extent to which we have self-limiting beliefs around our capacity for change and our adaptability and our flexibility, and like, as you said, you called it out, we go through tons of change outside work, but I don't change in work. Right. So, and sometimes we're having to deal with that for ourselves, I guess, as individuals and as practitioners. But then it's also we're working with and engaging with people who may be feeling a bit caught in that bind, So yeah, cool. Isolde, did you want to close out? I'm just sorry, chatting away here. I'm looking at the clock and I'm going, we better keep moving. So
yeah, all right. This is just a quick last point, and that is that we're seeing a basic trend that change management is becoming more formalized in organizations. So super great in many respects that we're starting to have a more formal place to sit as change managers doing the things that we're doing. So really working with getting the people on board.
Okay, super. Thanks, Isolde. Right. So the next little piece is we've been gathering some data at a couple of our webinars, and we're trying to build up a picture of what's actually happening. And we'd love to ask loads of questions, but we're going to keep this to just 4 if you can. So if you wouldn't mind popping onto your browser or your phone and going to polev.com/, and then it's my name without the E at the end, 467. So it's Angelo, McNeive 467.
Just put it into the chat for you guys if that's easier.
Cool. Excellent. Thanks, Isolde. All right. Okay, so the first question is, as a result of the pandemic, is the nature of the change agenda in your organization different or emerging, or something that is new or exploratory or whatever it might be? So just what's the kind of impact of the pandemic been in terms of the nature of the change agenda? Okay. Oops, coming back, sorry. Excuse me, that's my fault. So, Is everybody able to access that? Can I get a thumbs up? Yeah. Okay. That's lovely. Okay, for some reason, this was working perfectly earlier when we tested it at 1/4 to the hour, but it's not showing up on. Are you seeing the results coming through, guys?
No, it's
Okay. All right.
still
So
blank.
I'm seeing it on my Poll EV. So bear with me. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to swap my share over to the Poll EV. It was working perfectly earlier, so forgive me. I'm going to just jump over to another share. Everybody seeing the results there now? Is that coming through okay? Lovely. So what we're seeing then is we're seeing a significant difference in terms of the agenda, or it's slightly different. So we're seeing very substantial impact in terms of the pandemic, you know, and that's created a lot of challenges for people in terms of just having to pivot to maybe a clearer roadmap that was in front of us, and then having to go to somewhere else. So lovely, folks. Thanks very much. If I could, I'm going to ask you then to jump on to the next one. So since the onset of the pandemic, has your organization's expectations of you as a change manager changed? So what are we seeing? Okay, we're actually seeing that now on the screen. So I'm going to jump back. That should be okay in here now. Okay, so we're seeing it correctly now. Fixed itself, right? So we're seeing that there's been significant change, or changed slightly for about 2/3 of us. Yeah. All right. The next little piece then is, since the pandemic, has the demand for change managers changed? So are we seeing higher demand, lower demand for the role of a change manager in our organizations? Okay. Wow. Okay, so we're seeing close to 90% in terms of the demand for change managers increasing, right? So, on the one hand, the nature of the change work is different as a result of the pandemic, but a positive perhaps coming out of it, one silver lining, if we can call it that, is that we've got a recognition perhaps of the importance and the criticality of change managers in delivering on project success, okay? And last little piece then is, since the start of the pandemic, are recruiters looking for formal change management qualifications? So are they looking for a professional recognition or not? Are we seeing more of that? Okay. Lovely. So again, we're looking at basically about 70% who are saying that there's more of a focus on the credentials or the qualifications that we're looking for. And on the one hand, that's potentially a very good sign that organizations are starting to think more in a more structured way, in a more intentional way, around how they how they measured the qualifications that people have. Okay, lovely. Thanks. Thanks, folks. That was really helpful from our perspective, and we'll share that data with you afterwards. And I'll hand back to Isolde.
Great, thank you. That's yeah, super interesting to see your thoughts, guys. So basically, so now we're starting to move into what next, and to kind of finish this section off, you can. Sorry, brain freeze for a moment. So in the end, we've come to a number of different questions or different possibilities. So one thing is, what does a professional change manager look like? And I came across, there was a chat today, actually, you can see in the Change Management Network, where somebody's saying, look, I've done this, this, and this. I've got years of experience actually with change, but also specifically coming from a leadership point of view. Am I then a professional change manager? Well, the answer is, I would say yes. Maybe somebody else would say no. And we have to kind of self-define at a certain point. But there is some interesting movements that are happening, like, for example, that change management is becoming a much more asked for thing within the job world. And you're also starting to see that you've got specialisms, like maybe an IT specialist in different capacities. And they're asking then to put the change management speciality on top of that. So actually you're an IT person who has the capability of managing change. Or the other way around, you're a change manager who has a specialism like leadership. But there's no one sort of definition yet about what is change management, what is it that we actually do? And maybe this question is not important, but it's interesting to ask it anyway. The other thing that I've been seeing, so in job descriptions, if you look through companies, I find it always really interesting to look through job descriptions. And it's mostly because you get to really know what a company is about if you see the way that they're promoting for new people. And within this, you also start to see that actually a lot of the professional qualifications aren't asked for. It's mostly degrees and masters even, and many, many years of experience with change management. But we're kind of having a sort of chicken and egg kind of circle forming now, where we kind of, if we don't know what change management is, we can't say if we're a change manager or not. Or even though we bring all of these beautiful specialisms that I think a few of you have mentioned in the previous discussion, but at the same time, what then is a change manager of 8 or 10 or 20 years experience? It's very hard to define these things, but it'd be interesting to start to have some discussions around it. Because if we can get a little bit clearer, we can at least make nice steps for ourselves as a group, change managers together, or even just people who are busy with change in one capacity or another. So you don't need to be a change manager, but it could be in all capacities. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we're going to shift over to starting to think about the future now, right? And I'm going to pop you into your second and final breakout. And we'll give it about 10 minutes if that's okay, right? And this is then we're going to focus on the second aspect of the template. So this is thinking about tomorrow. And so the question would be, how do you see the future state of the change management profession developing? Given some of the things we've spoken about, we'll share some other thoughts afterwards in the debrief, but given what we talked about, where do we see the profession going and developing? What would we do more of, do less of? What might we add? What might we stop doing? And again, you might want to think about some of the factors we've pointed to, but please don't be limited by those, right? I'm really interested to hear kind of common themes or perspectives that are coming out of your chat, okay? So whenever we've dropped in the template again, just so you have it again, okay, into that. And Isolde, if you wouldn't mind dropping everybody into their breakouts.
So just before we do so, guys, maybe it's good just to check that you can get the document open this time. We had a bit of a problem last time. If not, then the best thing you can do is take a screenshot, so you at least know you got the prompts that we've prepared for you. Okay, so just give a couple more seconds. Hope you're all there. If you have any problems, do shout out to me in the chat, then I'll come and help you. Okay, happy discussing. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. So I'm intrigued. You had such good discussions last time. It'd be lovely to hear some of the thoughts and the things that came forward this time. So would anybody like to start for your group?
I was in mid-flow there. I was flying along there with my group.
Oh, I'm sorry for that. We had
so
to come back.
rudely interrupted.
Yeah. Well, maybe it's nice to know we really have a bit of a time limitation today. So we're going to formally finish soon. But after the formal finish, if any of you like to stick around, then we'd just like to open up the space for further discussion in a really informal way. So just keep that in mind. We're going to just rush a little bit through so we finish properly on time. So that's the reason for cutting you short, Angelo, I'm sorry. And then basically from past, well, I'm not gonna, from past, wherever you are, we'll have a more informal discussion with anybody who'd like to stay and be part of that. But for now, I'm gonna open up the space again. Anybody like to share a little bit of the discussion that happened within your group? Is there anyone?
Can I jump in just and share our group a couple of points? There was David and France and myself. Okay, so there was a couple of really interesting points that came out, and I think will resonate for people. One of this is to be part of the conversation in future with the organization, right? And to be involved in that conversation much earlier. And we talked about various aspects of what that would look like and what that meant. And that will probably see a more fuller integration of project and change management disciplines, and probably a greater expectation that project managers will wear both hats well, not just be a good project manager and dabble with change management, but they're going to actually have to straddle both sides of that conversation. Okay, so there were a couple of things that came out for us.
Great, thank you. Anybody else like to share something? Any other group?
Can I share from our group?
Yeah, please. Yeah,
Hi.
Monica, welcome.
Thanks. Yeah, so I think from ours, I think it's just around, we spoke specifically around the change manager just being so more adaptable in the different functions. So I think there's certain people that specialize, for instance, in IT, others potentially in culture change. So I think it's that integration of that skill set across various functions or different implementation types, which I think is quite key for a change manager going into the future. I think also then what we specifically spoke about as well was just around, how do we ensure that it becomes a more recognized profession? Yes, there is certification, but what more is required to get it to the level that it needs to be at. And yeah, I think Helen suggested some nice additional sort of drawing on different places like neuroscience, leadership, her Prince qualifications as well. And then also just finally, I think, becoming a great remote change manager, because I think we've become so used to the face-to-face interactions and, implementing change by being visible. And I think it's now, how do we, adapt to a new way of this remote way of working? And that's really just what we wanted to touch on. Thanks.
Great. Some really nice ideas there. I would also second a lot of those personally. Joseph.
Just a couple. Thanks, everyone. I think both groups in my case have been extremely beneficial to me and the whole thing. So thank you, everybody. A couple of points I wanted to say that we talked about on our side that resonated was the relevance of the role of coaching. at what I was going to say, a more senior level in an organization, as opposed to saying a managerial level. And then the greater relevance of leadership rather than just plain management. And that, you know, that dynamic between leading and following and coaching, we see more of that emerging, just to kind of summarize things.
Great, great. Thank you, Joseph. Yeah, I can see a lot of nodding heads there. So I think you're not the only one. So thank you. Just because of time, I'm going to ask you. Hang on.
Anami, did you want? Sorry, Isolde. I just saw Anami put her hand up. Do we have time for one last comment?
Well, let us finish formally, and then I was going to say, actually, let's open the topic up again in a moment. Yeah, and I just really I think it's great if we can finish properly on time, so everybody sees everything that was planned, and then basically from there we can enter into a super informal discussion, and everything goes.
Super.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'll run through this quickly, and we can share the slides with you afterwards. All right. So I guess just from the point of view of what some of the trends we're seeing for the future, again, ProSci's most recent research has highlighted some of these issues that we've spoken about, that agile methodology piece, increasing use of digitization and virtual tools for delivering change. We spoke about that earlier. Greater integration with project management, we've spoken about, and so on. And there's really a ton of change around coming at us in terms of how we do change. So if the world of work is changing, and is changing dynamically and rapidly in terms of hybrid workplace, return to work, all of that, then how we do change management is also going to have to change, right? And so there's huge implications for that. So we would ask you, if you wouldn't mind, really just to have a think about this, and this is something we can talk about in the after session, if you like, is, you know, what's the one thing that we think we could do as a profession to move things forward towards our desired tomorrow? Right? What's the one thing we could do?
So if you guys have any ideas, feel free to put it into the chat.
Yeah, and I'll hand over to Isolde to close this out. Yeah.
Great. And then, so last but not least, if you guys had filled out these documents, it'd be really great if you could put those into the chat now, because we would like to read through them, and any of the, just to gather some of the information that you guys have created and to share that to the whole group. When we come to sharing, this is being done through the Change Management Network, so there will be a video. But for your information, I'm always super careful about this. I call it privacy to explore. So all the breakout rooms will be edited out, and any other confidential or sort of sensitive moments. So it's good to give a sort of possibility to look back, but you won't be put on the spot on a personal level. So I hope that's okay. So that would be in the Change Management Network. But if you aren't part of the network, then please send me an email. I've just put that into the chat, and feel free, and then I'll send you a follow-up, because there's not an easy way to do that otherwise through this present channel. Then getting to the next step, if you guys would be interested to have more of these discussions, discussions with peers, so peers sharing with peers, there'll be some sort of formal structure, so we'll have some themes that we would discuss, but these could also come from the group. Then I would love to hear from you guys. I'd also love to take part myself rather than, sort of the hosting role, because I really find discussion face-to-face in a safe space together is such a beneficial thing for people. And if you agree, then it'd be great if you put a smiley into the chat, and then we'll know to get in contact with you. Last but not least, we are a part of, so we've got the Change Management Network, who's been our host for today. So thank you very much. I think Ross is here, who is one of the founders of that. So I think he's around somewhere. I can't see him on screen right now. We're also part of the CCB Network, which is a European-wide network where we have monthly practitioners events. And we're just starting out with some other webinars, both in the Change Management Network, but also in the CCB Network, which is purely aimed at just getting people into change management. So if you know of anybody, then yeah, please spread the good word. So for now, just last, bringing back just the last biggest thing for us, and that is we would love to get more of these discussions going with you. Doesn't matter where, when, or how, but we'd love to hear from you and to have the possibility to send out an invitation. So if any of you put a smiley in the chat, you'll get an invitation from me in the next couple of days for some further steps and possibilities. But for now, I really want to thank you. I think as a group, you've really brought the discussion in such an easy and natural way today. We haven't had to fight to get the information out of you or to get you talking. And it's brilliant because this is actually what, for me, what this webinar was about. It was about really hearing from you all. Yeah, what is really valuable right now? What are the next steps that we can make? So I'm going to open up the space now. We're formally finished. Angelo will be happy. I can get talking again. But with no further ado, we just close it formally now. But I'd love to ask the questions again. Is there anything else you would like to share from either of the two sort of sets of groups, the breakouts? So just open up the space. Feel free to